Hi everybody, it's Victoria Cunningham Downey here, the founder of Stretch Body Mind, and I wanted to come to you this Sunday at 2 o'clock. I don't know why I chose this time. I thought it would be an excellent time to talk to you about my stress story. And it was probably the worst time to choose because I'm not sure if you can hear it, but the dogs are going crazy because someone has randomly driven up, and I'm not sure. I think they're lost and they're looking for directions, or they're visiting, but the dogs are very territorial and they don't like anybody coming within 100 yards of the house and stuff like that. So anyway, apologies for them barking, and I think that we've enough stress in our lives without worrying about two yappy little dogs, one of whom has just had her operation. So yeah. So the other thing that's stressing me out this afternoon before I even start is that I was trying to get everything set up using my fabulous, if you can see it, well, you see my cup of tea, but my fabulous new computer, and was all set up, and I had done a sort of little mini chat about this, and what I had realised was the sound was horrendous. I tried to fix the sound again. I have a really good, if you can see, I'll hold it up, a really, really good microphone. I just didn't have time to set it all up, as is always the way. So I just want to say hi to everybody who's joined so far. Thank you, and lovely to see you all. Christine, thanks for saying hi, and I got your message, so I'm hoping your sister's enjoying it and can understand my Irish accent. So anyway, what else did I want to tell you before we start? So yes, please let me know if the sound is okay, because this is the laptop rather than the fancy new desktop computer. Isn't it always the way? Technology sent to try us. And what else do I want to know? Yeah, I don't want to start talking, telling you stuff, and you going, yeah, Victoria's like, our mouth's moving, but nothing's coming out. So if somebody could make a little point or say something. I can just see Anya's joined. Thanks, Anya. But get down and see my sister, because apparently she's a bad neck. So we've all got our stresses. So sounds okay. Perfect. Thank you very much. Okay, so, oh, and thanks for the thumbs up, whoever that was. So what am I going to tell you? Well, I had planned this a couple of weeks ago. I've been thinking about it for months. As so many of you know, I was doing a yoga CPD, which is a continuing professional development day. In America, they call them continuing education days. And this was specifically to deal with clients who come into yoga classes with anxiety or depression, or that they're just suffering from stress in some way. And then I got the most stressful, well, not stressful for me, but just stressful for my family. I got the very stressful news that my mum had cancer, and so obviously she's based in Northern Ireland, but I'm here in Scotland, and it just meant that everything that was not absolutely essential had to go out the window, and that meant that I wasn't paying any attention to my CPDs or promoting them or doing anything to get them started. And as a result, we had like one person signed up with a couple of people saying, oh yes, I'd love to do it, but I can't. And then the girl that I'm working with, based over in Edinburgh, Rachel from Panda Yoga, if she's there, hi Rachel. I really want to work with her. I love her wee studio. I love, she does yin yoga in particular, and I just love the ethos behind what she does, and I wanted to work with her. But unfortunately, we could not get the dates to tally up between, me teaching obviously yoga or Pilates teacher trainings, and her having the studio rented out for other things. It means that we are now waiting until the new year to launch that particular training. It's a 2-day or a weekend long training, and it's very specifically to look at some of the techniques that we're going to talk about really from now to Christmas. So the reason, before I start, the reason I want to tell my stress story is because I have taught yoga since 2001, and a lot of people know me as a yoga or Pilates instructor, and I'm lovely, happy, smiling, great young girl. Away she goes. I'm not so young anymore, but anyway. But not everybody knows like what was going on behind that, and I think in some ways I was a little bit ashamed to admit that I was having mental health problems, because people would say, oh my God, I wouldn't expect that. You know, you do yoga. Can you not like heal yourself? And of course, it's not quite as easy as that. So to be honest with you, if I didn't have the yoga in my life, I'm not sure I'd be here. That's how serious my stress story is. So if you're settled down, I am now, I'm going to tell you a little bit about my stress story. So apologies if you've heard this before, and apologies if I swear, because I don't know. So anyway, stress affects lots of people differently, and some people can undergo certain stressors and not have the same reaction as I did in this particular story. So my stress story starts in 2006. It really starts 2005, but we'll say 2006. So I had decided in 2005 to leave my full-time youth and community work post and my part-time yoga teaching, and I had decided to leave the full-time job in order to go full-time as a yoga teacher, but in particular to be a yoga teacher for young people. So I had come up with this fabulous idea, particularly relating to a lot of the poverty that I was dealing with, and rising obesity levels because young people weren't eating the correct foods or were really poorly educated about health, because their parents were poorly educated about health, and also really low self-esteem. And so these were my main triggers that I wanted to address. And I had done a lot of training I started in 2006, I quit the job and I went both feet in. Let's start a charity. My charity was called Stretch and Play Company Limited. It was a limited company and it was a registered charity. I had a management committee. We had a proper accountant. We had business consultants. We had all sorts of things, because in those days in Northern Ireland, there was funding available to start social enterprises or to start, charities, particularly, depending on what you were doing. And because I was working with young people, because it was in deprived areas of Northern Ireland, it was an opportunity. So I was the only employee of the company, and that was where my first mistake was. So it was a registered charity, and as a result, it had to have a management committee, and the management committee had to consist of people, because it was a charity, who weren't making money from the charity. Makes sense. But that meant that I couldn't be a member of the management committee and claim a wage. So I chose to give away my power to the management committee with I suppose under the proviso that they would, carry the torch for me and for the company. And then I could get paid, and, I could put invoices in, etc. But then the other problem was that I found myself applying for funding and being successful in the funding application, and then being the only person available to do the work because I was the only employee. And then I would be stressed out and worried about the fact that we didn't have any other work coming in, because I'd been so busy doing the delivery of the work in nursery schools, primary schools, secondary schools, wherever, that I had no time to sit in the office and write funding applications. And as a result, it was very stop-start, or very sort of feast and famine, really. And I don't know which was more stressful. Putting the applications in, being rejected was horrendous, because of course this charity was so dear to my heart that every rejection felt like a personal slight on me, even though that's not what it was. And then the other stress was that you got the money, and you have to deliver the project, and then the stress was like, oh shit, how am I going to get to deliver this project? And I had colleagues and people that came on board and did some work with me, and all of that sort of doofed around. At the same time, I had this real sense that I wasn't good enough, and as a result, I underwent an extreme amount of training. I basically, whatever training I could get. I just noticed, by the way, I've got a lamp coming out of my head. Anyway, so okay, so I was doing all this training, and I swear to God, I was the most qualified children's yoga teacher in the UK and Ireland at one point. I actually got funding to go to America and get trained in New York. You know, I had done so much work. I was in India as well, and that was all sponsored. And yeah, did you know I'd been to India? It's a bit of a joke with my yoga classes, but yes, I was in India, and it was sponsored because I was doing this social entrepreneurship with children and blah, blah, blah. So I had lots of great experiences and great opportunities, but underlying it all, I swear, was this sense of where's the next, you know, meal coming from? Where's the next penny coming from? Are we going to be able to afford to pay our mortgage this month? Because, you know, I have left a job, and it was a well-paid job, to go and have nothing. So as a result, I did what I knew how to do best, which was take on more classes in the evening, which were adult classes. So I could, you know, go to them and get paid £20, £25, £30, whatever it was, which is, you know, it's quite well paid. But I would be driving, you know, to this one, and then, you know, 15 miles to that place, and then having to go back to the other place. And I remember at one stage I also didn't want to say no to anything, so I drove for an hour to deliver an hour's class, and then drove an hour home. And I was getting paid 25 quid for it, but when you divide that by 3 hours and include your petrol money, I mean, I basically was paying to do that training. And all at this time, I guess my mental health wasn't great. The stress was getting more and more insistent, really, and my husband in the middle of it lost his job, and so that really added, you know, put the cat amongst the pigeons, I guess. And one of my management committee, very well-meaning member of my management committee, suggested that I get myself a part-time community development job during the day, and, you know, still continue with stretch and play. And, you know, maybe it would mean I could cut down on some of the evening classes, because at one stage I was probably doing 18 to 20 hours in the evenings, in addition to working, you know, 9 to 5 every day in this office. So I applied for a job, a management job, like a community development job, and it wasn't part-time, it was full-time. And I got it because I had the experience necessary. And that's when the shit really hit the fan, because it was one of the most dysfunctional offices that I have ever worked in. It was run by an absolute chancer. She was horrendous, and that trickled from the top all the way down to the bottom. It was, I was astounded. The staff were so unmotivated and unhappy, and skivers, absolute skivers. And for me, you know, having grasped for everything, for at this stage, we're talking 2008, I got that job. So for 2 years, I had been scrimping and saving and trying to take in as much additional work as I could to support my charity. So there were these people on 25, 30 grand a year doing fuck all, and it really irritated me. I don't mind that people get paid well as long as they work hard for it, and it really frustrated me. Like, I remember one time I walked in, and the receptionist, who saw herself as the sort of social secretary for our boss, she was like, oh, well, the boss is at a meeting. And then I went out to get the scones, because we got scones every day, don't even talk. So I went out to get the scones, and who should I see sitting in the front window of the hairdressers but my boss, getting her ends done, you know. So I came back in, or she came in like a couple of hours later, and I was like, oh, you've had your hair done? Yes, but I did it in my own time. I got it done at night. I was like, I'm not your fucking keeper. You can do whatever you want. I just thought I'd you know, call you out on it. So anyhow, I started then picking up some of those bad habits. So what was happening was I'd got other people in to do a lot of the delivery of work I was doing with Stretch and Play. And one person in particular was really bad, and so the school that she was in contacted me and said, look, you need to come in and fix this. And it was my charity, it was my name on the line, and I had to go in. So I started saying, I have a meeting in Tandragee at, you know, 3 p.m, so I will I'll be back later. and I would go into the car in my office clothes, and I would change in the car like I was freaking Superman into my Stretch and Play t-shirt and my leggings, and I would go to this school, teach the class, drive back to the office again in the car park, change back into my office clothes, and walk in. Really, really productive meeting. It was great, and I was doing that type of thing. I remember the one girl that I got on with in that workplace. She phoned me and she's like, "Where are you?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm in Dublin Airport." "What the fuck are you doing at Dublin Airport?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm going to Jersey." "But you're meant to be in work." I says, "Yeah, just tell them I'm in a meeting," and which she did, and which nobody questioned, and which was horrendous. So the fact that I started to do all this, I went to Glasgow, I saw Dolly Parton, as you do. All of these things were sort of spiraling and spiraling, and I went from having this underlying sense of fear into having this really strong sense, because having had all this fear, by the way, I don't know if I mentioned it, which I don't think I did yet. I had been to the doctors about it and had been on antidepressants probably for over a year, maybe more. And so it was to help me deal with my anxiety about my work situation, my life situation, and everything like that. So what I found, though, was that the stress was getting increased, and my thoughts were getting more scattered, and my emotions were not of sensations of sadness or anxiety or fear, but of elation and sort of supreme self-confidence and grandiose plans and ideas that I could do anything and just, you know, take on the world and take on everybody. And it was really interesting, stroke frightening. And it wasn't until I went to an auction and I bid on a property, and I didn't tell a single soul. And when asked why I'd bid on the property, I said it was because Jesus, and I'm not religious, those who know me know that yoga is my religion, but Jesus had told me that this would be the right thing and that I should bid on this property and make like a Stretch and Play centre for the world. And it all made sense. I came home, I said to Chris, I've just bought this property, and he's like, "Holy fuck, what are you doing?" And you know, he's swearing at me, still didn't go through. I says, "I need to go down to mum and dad because I need to borrow £25,000 within an hour. I need to pay the deposit." And I walked down to the house to mum and dad's. No, I drove down singing and smiling and laughing and all that. And my dad starts shouting as well, because I'm like, "Yeah, I need to borrow 25 grand. But it was when my mum burst into tears that it suddenly dawned on me that my behaviour was not normal, and what I had just done was completely uncharacteristic, completely out of the blue, except that if anyone had actually looked at the way my moods had gone, I had moved into a period of mania, and not only mania, but psychosis. So the fact that I was hearing voices, people on the television were turning around and speaking to me directly. There were voices in my head as I was driving, suggesting that I drive faster and drive into trees. And the voice in my head, which was actually me, sitting in the driver's seat beside me, was saying, "You don't want to kill yourself. You just need to crash into a tree and hurt yourself badly enough that people know that you're not well." And for me, that's one of the most, I think it's one of the most fundamental things of my stress story, because in my head, in my psychosis, I knew that people couldn't see that I was unwell because it was inside me, and that the only way they would be able to see it was if I had a broken leg or I was in hospital. I needed something physical wrong with me for people to understand and let me release myself from the stress that I had put myself under. So it was a really challenging time. What happened was My mum brought me to the doctors. First, she brought me to the solicitors and told them to F off and that I wasn't well. Then she brought me to the doctors, and the doctor brought what they call the at-home crisis team. So because Northern Ireland's NHS is really stretched and their mental health resources is really stressed, they would prefer not to put you into a unit if preferable. Saves them money, I guess. But anyway, they came around to me and they were like, oh, blah, 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 right, you need to come off your medication immediately. We're going to put you on some antipsychotic medication. You need to get some sleep. You need to, take some rest. And, maybe we should take you in. And I was like, take me where? I have yoga classes to teach. And one of the psychiatrists turned around and said, well, if you feel that you're well enough to teach classes, then you're not well enough to be in hospital. And I went, I never said I was ill, that I needed to be in hospital. And it was a whole to-do. But anyway, the at-home crisis team treated me, looked after me for a month, came and visited on a twice daily and then daily basis. And as I say, I came off my antidepressant medication because sometimes that medicine, which is designed to help raise the serotonin levels and make you feel a little better, can actually raise the serotonin levels too much. The antipsychotics did help me to sleep because they're basically very strong tranquilizers. But I didn't stay on them. They just, they weaned me off them after the month. And then it took a while, like that was September 2008. And in February 2009, I finally had an appointment with the psychiatrist. So in the meantime, I had been treated by my GP and I had a very good GP at the time who was very supportive and everything like that. So anyway, I went into the psychiatrist in the psychiatric unit, and I went in perfectly sane. My mum said, do you want me to come with you? Why? There's nothing wrong with me. I'm just, telling them my story like I'm telling you. And I had some distance from the actual experience. I wasn't in the experience anymore. I was, whatever, 6 months past it. And so I told the story, and the consultant, it was just like a senior house officer, and she said, oh yes, it sounds to me like you're perfectly fine. And then she came out and she left me alone for about 15 minutes, and then she came back in with a leaflet on lithium, and she said, well, the consultant psychiatrist agrees with me that you have bipolar disorder, so we're going to put you on lithium, but this is the information that you need to read, and we will send a prescription to your doctor. And I was like, what? So I went in perfectly sane, and I came out a nut job. Somebody that had bipolar disorder, and I had not for a second thought that that was what I had. I know I've suffered from depression on and off, I guess from my teens onwards, and I firmly believe that the stress that I put myself under, had I been mentally stronger, would not have sent me into that spiral where I ended up, ridiculously going, homes under the hammers crazy at an auction. But I think people would have to be very strong to withstand the stress that I had put myself under. And this was something that Chris, my husband, for those who don't know, had said to me before I decided to leave my job, or just when I was in that crux of talking about leaving it. And he said, do not take something that you love and make it into your full-time job, because it will stress you out and you will hate it. And I don't want to see you growing to hate it. And he was so right. Within 2 years, I hated it. What I ended up doing in 2009 was I realized that the major stress was delivering the yoga to children and young people, because I feel like sometimes kids and young people they just know. They just, you can't lie to them. They can sense things, and particularly the wee ones, because, they would come up to me and I'd think I was perfectly fine, and they would say, oh, Victoria, you're sad. And it's like, I'm not sad. Yes, you are. We know you're sad. And I was like, how do you know? Because I've got this big stupid smile on my face and I'm telling you, fairy stories. And so, yeah, so I thought, right, that is not the right thing for me. The other thing that was definitely not right for me was to have a full-time job or a job in community development. I needed to let go of that type of environment because there was nothing I could do about how dysfunctional that organisation was, because it was just part of the system, which is one of the most dysfunctional systems in the UK. The Northern Ireland peace process and all that bullshit around it. And no offence to you if you work in community development, I'm sure that what you do is worthwhile, but what I was doing was not worthwhile. And it was so frustrating because, you know, I'd created a charity that really could have made a difference. And yet I was sitting there like doing nothing, going around and having cups of tea in old people's homes. And yeah, you know, just, it was really not the right place for me. And I was never going to be able to do anything to change the system. And so I had to let that go. It was the same thing with Stretch and Play itself, because what I had created when I created Stretch and Play, or what my vision was that I would be able to change policy to help ensure that all schools and youth clubs would provide physical activities to young people that were not competitive and that would help to raise their self-esteem rather than make them feel put down or not picked. And what I ended up being was a children's entertainer. In short, I was a children's entertainer. And while I was doing that, you know, I was grappling with the fact that I didn't have children of my own and all of that, and it made it difficult, challenging, and it just wasn't the right thing for me. But the one thing, believe it or not, that didn't cause me stress, by the way, driving caused me huge amounts of stress, but teaching my classes, my adult classes, didn't stress me out. In fact, I enjoyed them. I found that I could lose myself for an hour while I was guiding the students through whatever the poses were, whether it was yoga or Pilates, and it was just the perfect career for me. Except that I never thought it was going to be a full-time thing. It had always been my supplement to all my full-time work. And actually it was like, well, do you know what? You don't need to work full-time because you're not, you know, you're fragile at the moment. It took me some time to get used to lithium, and then I took other medication. Hold on a second. I need a wee cup of tea. So I also take, I still take lithium, by the way, and I take antipsychotic medication as well, because it does help me to get to sleep. And I just wasn't ready for a full-time office job and office politics, and I guess having a boss or someone to answer to other than my clients. All I had to do with my yoga and my Pilates classes was to turn up on time and teach them. And I could do that. And I could do it and enjoy it. And as I continued to do that, my health continued to improve. And it's something that I'm really proud of. Even in my darkest days and my most ill days, in the days when I was tearing my hair out, like literally pulling chunks of hair out and tearing at my arms, and Mum was driving me to classes because I wasn't allowed to be in a car, like to drive a car, and I was swearing at her like she was the worst person in the world. No, fuck you, you bitch. And then I would slam the door shut and I would walk into that class, and suddenly I had this big smile on my face. Hello everybody, welcome to yoga or Pilates, whatever it was. I know, let's go. And you know, and my mum would sit there in the car park, you know, reading a paper or whatever, waiting for me and waiting to get abused by me and then drive me home. And God love her. Thank her, you know, so much thanks goes to my mum, because I wouldn't have survived without her. But eventually what happened was I didn't need her to drive me. I felt comfortable enough driving myself, and the classes helped to anchor me. They kept me when I was feeling really manic. Well, I have to be here at that time and I have to teach that class. And I have never let anybody down or not turned up to a class. So yeah, it's one of my, it's not my biggest achievement, but if you think about the depths of despair that my brain was in, I think it is a pretty huge achievement. There were days as well when I wasn't manic, but like, or angry, but I was so depressed that I could barely wash myself, you know, and I still, I had to wash myself because I had a class at 7 o'clock or things like that. I also started to look forward to things, so that was good. I opened my own yoga studio, which had been a long held dream of mine in Lurgan, in my hometown in Northern Ireland. And I really enjoyed the whole process of that. And I guess the process of creating a community. Highlights as well are delivering the Pilates instructor training, because I just found that I could really lose myself in the curriculum of that and delivering that to my clients and watching them become really good instructors. It was fabulous. So I was thrilled when I got the opportunity in 2014 to do the same thing with the yoga. So I've been teaching Pilates instructors since 2011 and yoga teachers since 2014. And I have, through all of my stress and mess, have made a success of my company, which is now called Stretch Body Mind. It used to be Stretch Northern Ireland, and it all comes from Stretch and Play, the original name for my kids' company. And I know that I am better because last year I delivered my first Stretch and Play session, training session, in probably like 4 years, maybe more, and it really felt good. It felt good to impart that knowledge, and it didn't feel stressful, and it didn't bring me right back to when I was feeling so stressed. So yeah, so I just wanted to tell you my story to let you know that regardless of where stress takes you and how you react to it, and whether you become depressed by it or incredibly anxious or develop full-blown psychosis like I did, there is still a way out of stress, and you can learn to deal with stressors and stresses in a much better way. So I now know, like, a lot quicker when I'm going to be stressed out. So there are things that I want to do, and I have to think to myself, do I want this, or does my ego want it? If it's an ego thing, I've got to let it go. Do I need to be involved in everything? No, I don't. So, you know, so I let it go. And it feels really good to release that hold on things and not to have to be at the center of everything. I think it's good for me, very positive for me. But having said that, well, I'm not. I was going to say I put myself at the center. I don't. When I'm delivering my teacher trainings, I allow my students to put themselves to the center. So we talk a little bit, particularly in the start of the course, it's a lot more about me imparting my knowledge. But as these courses go on, both the yoga and the Pilates is a lot shorter as well, so this happens over a much more condensed time. But it goes from me talking to the student talking, and then there's obviously the phase in between where I stop talking as much and my students start talking a little bit more. And I love that. I love that whole process. I'm really enjoying that. I still teach yoga, and well, I call it I've got a yoga lattes class, which is a combination of yoga and Pilates, and I teach that in Biggar. And I also am teaching Pilates at the moment, and a yoga flow class, which starts at the end of the month. And it doesn't feel like it's too much. It just feels fun, and it's amazing because I don't really like driving to go to classes, but I can walk, and it takes me 5-10 minutes to walk down to the venue. and walk home again. How great is that? And usually I walk home via the co-op and get sweets or something. But it's a really lovely life that I have at the moment. So I just wanted to say that in case anyone was worrying. Chris is working now. We live in Scotland now. Mum's cancer is, well, she's done 6 out of 6 chemos, so it has a very good prognosis, and we're waiting to, I think about 4 to 6 weeks now for the scans. And thanks, Anya. If you can't read that, Anya has said, good for you, Victoria. You're very brave to talk about this so openly. And Laura has said, I've always missed your classes. Thanks, Laura. Oh, I miss you at classes. She's too fit for me now. But anyway, so what was I saying? I can't even remember. Oh yeah, Mum's doing really well. Things are going really well. And I'm not saying that to like big myself up. I just want you to know that there is a way out of your stress story. And to be honest with you, I mean, Anya has said that, you know, you're very brave. It has taken me a long time to talk about that story. Like, that was 2008. This is 2017. So almost 10 years for me to admit openly how much of a dick I was. And, you know, there were a lot of things that I have left out of that story because you don't need to hear them. But that the bidding on the property was like the culmination of this mania that just got more and more ridiculous. And so much of it was stress related. And my poor management committee, all I remember was that they had come together not to support Stretch and Play, but to support me, because the two of us were so interlinked it was hard to tell the difference. And then they could see that I was stressed, and they were trying to find ways to close the organisation, and I was resisting that because, you know, it would admit failure. But they did close the organisation. It was the right thing to do. And actually, I don't believe that it was a failure. I believe that it was way ahead of its time, and that now, only now, are councils and, you know, local authorities and schools looking at these types of activities. And in fact, I'm very lucky to have been invited in as a consultant with South Lanarkshire Council to deliver probably Stretch and Play sessions with within schools, within classrooms, and also in after school activities. So that should be coming up in the new academic year, which is this year, and it'll be running for a few years because they've all got funding now. So so it was a success. It was just very hard for me to let that go. And at the time I couldn't see the success because of there being so many what I saw as catastrophic failures. It was a lot of firefighting. It was a lot of bullshitting. It was a lot of plate spinning. And all of that when I already had quite a fragile mental state. So my suggestion is that if you're finding the situation something similar, hopefully not quite as bad as mine, that you speak to someone. And I mean someone like a GP. And I know how difficult it is to get a GP appointment, but it's really, really important that you speak to someone. I would also suggest looking online, things like Mind or even the Samaritans. And I'm not saying that you're feeling suicidal or anything like that, but that you can get support. And sometimes you just need to talk it out. And on that note, what I'm planning to do, as you know, I said at the start, if you were with me at the start, I was saying about how there will be a continuing professional development day for yoga teachers, learning different techniques that you can use for your clients who have stress, anxiety, and depression. But in the meantime, I have decided to open up a number of virtual retreats, which sounds very exotic, but they're virtual. So it's a chance for us to meet online. We're going to be meeting on Zoom, which is a really good platform because you can see me, you can see, I'll have little PowerPoint presentations, but I can see you as well. So it means that we can actually have a conversation instead of it just being like me talking at you a wee bit like I am at the moment. And the plan is that I'm going to tell you a lot more about the techniques and tips that I use now to deal with stress and to nip it in the bud. So it's things like, you know it straight away, it's things like yoga. So we'll be looking at some yoga breathing techniques. It's things like, if I can find some essential oils, because I'm obsessed. It's things like nice herbal teas, little rituals that you can do, little cards, lots of things like that. So it's going to be, I'm doing the first one on Thursday evening. It's from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. and it costs £39. So what I'm going to do for the first one is actually give you, if you've been watching this, or don't even worry if you haven't been watching it, is I'm going to give you a £20 discount. So you're going to get to be with me for 2 hours for just £19. So I will be putting the details up at the end of this, and if you're interested, I'd love that you would join me. So basically it's going to be just a PayPal button, so you can pay £19, and if you join us, if you pay that PayPal button, it'll direct you to a web page which will explain what we're doing, you know, that you need to have the 2 hours available. If you're not available on Thursday from 7 to 9, but you would still like to come, I would suggest not coming to this Thursday, because my intention is that I don't want to tape these sessions, and I know, and I'm really guilty of it, I go to a lot of webinars and I'm online with things, and I always want the recording because it suits me in my time, but this is really personal stuff, and I would prefer that it's not